Welcome to the Always Better Than Yesterday podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Hartley. This podcast exists to equip and inspire your heart-centered leadership. Every week, we bring interviews with some of the greatest heart sets and mindsets on the planet. I hope the heartprint of our time spent together is that it creates new possibilities for you and all those you come into contact with. If you'd like to explore what we could make possible for you, then head to abty.co.uk/connect and book in a free 30-minute call to begin our journey together. I just want to express a huge amount of gratitude to our sponsors, Exhale Coffee. I have been a big fan of Exhale Coffee since meeting Alex and the team back in 2022. Exhale is the first coffee to be sourced, roasted and lab tested specifically to maximize its antioxidant and anti-inflammatory potency. An independent lab test has shown that 1 cup of Exhale Coffee has the same antioxidant power as 1.8 kilos of blueberries or 55 oranges. I'm a huge fan, and Mrs. H loves the decaf, especially because she knows that Exhale use the mountain water decaffeination process, which uses only pure glacial water from the highest mountain in Mexico and no nasty chemicals. Simply head to exhalecoffee.com/ABTY for your special offer. And lastly, before I introduce this week's guest, please do subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. It would really help us leave a greater heartprint on this world. On episode 284, I welcome Dr. Claudia Thompson to the podcast. Dr. Claudia is a conscious leader, a quantum activator, and multi-dimensional guide, helping her clients and community heal through meditation, subconscious neural reprogramming, guided energy work, and past life regressions via her quantum soul sessions. Claudia learned how to reach into the depths of herself and learned how to create the love, health, success, and abundance she was searching for. Claudia woke up to the worthy, infinite being that she is, and now empowers others to do the same, helping you heal from limiting beliefs and past experiences and uncovering the most authentic version of you. It's episode 284 with Dr. Claudia Thompson. Dr. Claudia, welcome to Always Better Than Yesterday podcast. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Yes, very well. The amount of times your face has appeared on my phone, just convicted with like, hey, by the way, listen up. I got a message for you. You better stop what you're doing and pay attention.
I love
So,
that.
yeah, 100%. You know, a few of my friends, we've been sending them, Dr. Claudia's appeared on my timeline again today. So you've already had a ripple effect without even knowing it.
I love that. And actually, I'm less aware of how big of an effect it is than probably most people realize. And that's part of the reason why I take time multiple times a week to actually read everybody's comments. I don't actually have time to comment back on all of them, but I do make sure that I heart as many of them as I can, because seeing the impact that the messages have on so many people keeps me motivated to continue sharing and allow the messages to be channeled through me.
One of the things that people comment when they come to me is that they love to see the evolution of me, you know, because I've put podcasts out now for 6 years. People sort of meet us as we are today, right? And having a library of showing up and sharing what we share, you can see our own evolution. And you know, and I experience you as someone that's really grounded, someone that's like stepping into the sage. But if you just scroll back like 2 or 3 years, there's an
evolution that took place.
100%. And so I go a step further. I want to know like what it was like before you started to share those messages. And I imagine like the first time you started to do that, there was a whole host of
Hesitation.
Yeah.
Big time.
Yeah.
So I didn't anticipate that this is what I would be doing or where I would be or how I would be sharing information online with people many years ago. Like this was not the intended route of communication. So before I started sharing the messages, I have a PhD in physical activity, nutrition, and wellness, and I'm a registered dietitian. I focused primarily on nutrition communication,
Mm.
and I taught college classes. I was a college professor. And the information that I shared online was primarily focused around developing a healthy relationship with food. And
Mhm.
so, intuitive eating and learning how to listen to your body and learning how to navigate that while letting go of disordered behaviors
Mm.
and relationships with food in your body.
Mm.
So, that was primarily my focus when I started showing up online. And so, when I started to wake up, because behind the scenes, I've always been very spiritually inclined in a seeker mindset. I never
Mhm.
had any sort of particular religion that I adhered to. I always felt that there were many paths up the same mountain,
Mhm.
and I was exploring that personally. I spent a lot of time in Sedona, Arizona, so I give a big chunk of the credit to me waking up, being present in that energy. I
Mm.
spent a lot of time in nature and those kinds
Mhm.
of things. And so connecting in those places and spaces, um, I knew there was a connection. I wasn't sure what was going on there.
Mm. What was it about
Um,
Sedona, Arizona? Because my client Jason was. I've just made the connection. He lives in Texas, in Fort Worth, Texas, but he was driving through Sedona. He said he just got out and he was meditating on a rock,
mhm.
which is, when you talk with these guys, they're totally normal now. But like to anybody else, it's like, why would you do that? What is it about Sedona, about the energy? What?
So I mean, there are multiple places and spaces on this planet,
Mm.
scattered uh, widely, that are highly connected, and emanate source
Mm.
energy. I call them neutral zones
Mhm.
because some of these places and spaces, you can have a very clear, peaceful experience. And
Mhm.
other places, it may be a little bit more dense. So
Mhm.
your transition through may be more aligned with shadow work and things like that. But
Mm.
Sedona is a very clear,
Mm.
elevated place. The people that live there respect the land, they respect
Mm.
the energy. Um, and it feels natural to
Mm.
connect there.
I live an hour away from Glastonbury, which I understand is another one of those earth kind of heart chakra sites.
No, that would explain why you're doing the work that you're doing. You're so close. Because the thing is you don't have to go and have like some big giant monumental experience. Just being in the energy will move your frequency so that you start to experience expanded states of consciousness.
Mm. So, you have a PhD and this kind of soul work, it takes some sort of integration, right? The two, the intellectual mind and the way that I was always a seeker, but the spiritual was not part of my seeking. There was certain archetypes, and the father archetype was never something I was ever going to engage and surrender to. So just pursued on getting as much knowledge and information as possible, learning about people, learning about the way that the world works. But I went through my own awakening phase because I had a heart experience that my mind couldn't quite explain. That was back in 2019. And that started me on a journey of a process of both healing, looking at loads of different ways, like you say, up the ladder. And then my last kind of year or two has been about how do I integrate that kind of expansion of my soul with this mind, with this body in this lifetime.
Mhm.
I've been fortunate enough to be guided by some great mentors, Neil Donald Walsh, Conversations with God, and many, many other great people that have come on this podcast. So I know that you speak of many and many of these wonderful kind of terms, but I'd love to know, without necessarily getting to, we'll do the teaching bit at the end, but I'd love to know your story into this. Like, how did you dive in? Did you tiptoe? Like,
Well, yeah, that's kind of looping back to, I spent that time in Sedona and things like that. And um, I came to a place where I realized a whole lot needed to change in my life in order to get to where I needed to be.
mm,
And it definitely unfolded in layers. So I struggled with food in my body for decades of my
mm,
life before healing that. And I really wasn't
mm,
able to perceive anything past that until I was able to develop that layer of self-worth in myself with food
Mm,
and my body before I moved on any further. And
mm,
so, um, that was like the first part of the evolution, and I was able to heal myself through going through a master's degree in human
mm,
nutrition and a PhD, that also focused, somewhat on nutrition.
mm,
And it showed me that there was no perfect way and that there was actually a lot of research that couldn't explain why we are the size that we are and why we react to food the way that we react and all of these kinds of things. And through that, I realized that there was an energetic piece
mm,
missing. There was the
mm,
also the piece of how we speak to ourselves and the
mm,
stories that we're telling ourselves. And so
mm,
through my own personal experiences with that, once I healed that, I realized it was like an opportunity to look around at the rest of my life and go, oh, wait, this is a mess. This isn't, I got into a marriage that was based on me not having any self-worth or
mm,
boundaries. And I was repeating generational cycles of unhealthy relationships.
mm,
And it was really the crux of the beginning of an unfolding of an awakening that took several years to unfold, because there were a lot of things to heal in that,
mm,
and that process, while as difficult as it was,
mm,
I wouldn't change a single thing because that really showed me how far in the depths I could go and then dig myself out of that
mm,
hole and reach up even further.
mm,
Um, so yeah, I had an experience. I was on a business trip in New York City when I was still married, and I was having internal conversations of like something has to change. Like this is a breaking point, for several months before this trip. And before the trip, I had read The Alchemist like 10 years prior.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
And for whatever reason, I was like, I feel compelled to reread this book. And
yeah,
I went to a like reused bookstore in Flagstaff, Arizona, this little bookstore that has like musical instruments and books and a little
yeah.
coffee shop and all these things. And I found a copy of The Alchemist, and it was a used copy, and it actually had a note in it. And that note did not make sense for like 4 years after the fact. But afterwards, I was like, oh, that note was for me. Oh my goodness, that's wild.
Ah,
And I reread that book and I knew I needed to ask the universe what I
yeah.
should do. And so when I was on that trip in New York, I was standing in a park looking at the Brooklyn Bridge, and I just looked up and I was like, so you guys want to tell me what to do? Because I know something's got like either I'm staying or I'm going, and I'm not a quitter at anything. So the idea of leaving was incredibly difficult.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, within a couple of hours, I was getting very, very clear signs of what I needed to do. And over the course of a plane ride home, I made a plan, and
Mm.
less than a month later, I moved clear across country. So,
What did that note say?
um, then, well, it didn't make sense for years later, but it was just a specific sign and synchronicity linked to a past life that I had. And I I acquired this information through downloads and things like that. And then I picked up the book and the note fell out. And I was like, oh, okay,
Yeah, yeah,
you
yeah,
are
yeah.
for me. Perfect.
Mm. Yeah, because so much of the I guess the common thread through a lot of your messages from your guides is pay attention. Just
Yeah,
start
because
to pay attention.
the magic is there
Mm.
if you're open to it. I mean, it's there regardless.
Mm.
But if you're paying attention to it, it gets louder. That channel opens wider. Your
Mm.
connection grows. Your faith and your trust in that connection grows.
Mm.
And through my experience, again, like I wasn't planning on doing what I'm doing now. Um, but through the course of receiving messages and
Mm.
working on my own healing and things like that, there came a
Mm.
day where they were like, "Hey, we're going to need you to record this and put it on TikTok." And I was like, "You have to be kidding me. You have to be kidding me. Like, I'm the science person.
Mhm.
I'm the PhD person. And you
Mm.
want me to sound like a crazy person and say, oh, well, I received a message
Yeah,
from this
yeah.
place you cannot see, and here it is." And I took the leap and I went ahead and did it. And it was one of the first things I posted. I think it went to like 3+ million people or something. And I was like, what just happened? This is, I wasn't anticipating any of that
Mm,
at
mm.
all.
Yeah, one of the things that has been reverberating my awareness over the last 6 months is that sometimes we can be put in a position where we'll get some level of exposure, some level of access, but our character hasn't quite expanded to the level of being able to handle that pressure or
No,
success. Like, how was that? How do you resonate with that?
it was a real trial and error, like learn through the fire
Mhm.
situation for me. Because I was still in layers of my own shadow and I still had other things that needed to come
Mm,
up and heal. And I had to develop my trust and
mm,
my understanding of who, what, when,
mhm.
where I'm communicating with these guides. And you have to develop discernment. You have to.
Yeah.
And the thing is there's no way to develop it unless you're tested in all kinds of ways. And so that's why when I see like
Mm,
a lot of practitioners that are early on, like absolutist messages
mm,
um, about the state of affairs on this
mm,
planet need to be taken with a grain of salt every single time. If the message is not coming from a place of love, of
mm,
guidance, of care,
mm.
from the heart space, because you can feel the difference in the messaging, but again, it takes time to learn all
Sure.
of that.
Yeah, I come from a so I would say I'm a follower of Jesus, and I think sometimes that means that the group of people who also identify as followers of Jesus have this immediate kind of, oh, if it's not Jesus, it's it's the enemy, it's the devil, it's and
Yeah.
I like to have a bit more of a nuanced conversation, and I think what you just said there is around discernment, because I think if we're looking at the energies of the polarity or duality of light and dark, and
Well,
it's
I wouldn't even say it's light and dark, to be honest. It's
mm,
like dense and less dense. Like it's
mm,
a level of density that we're
mm,
dealing with. And because the reality is like the information that I've downloaded and how I like my foundational knowledge of soul existence and things like that is we all come from the same creator. Like source
mm,
is one thing, and but source is also taking the opportunity to learn through everything it creates. And
mm,
so it needs mirrored experiences. It needs things in duality to understand
mm,
that. It needs contrast.
mm,
And that's why I don't like using terms like good, evil. I mean, and it's funny to me because I started off teaching nutrition like this. Like, we
mm,
can't demonize certain foods, we can't put them in these categories. If we do that, then you create this relationship with it where there's this tug of war and you don't want the resistance there. And
mm,
so when we see things as levels of density,
mm.
levels of contrast for our understanding,
Yeah.
it neutralizes those heavier topics.
Mm.
It's not that they don't exist. It's not that
I'm with you.
there aren't dueling factions of things. It's not
Yeah.
that. It's removing the fear around it, because
Yeah.
if you play into the fear, if you move into that fear, you are creating more of that. You're
Mm,
creating more of that existence. And it's our job here to learn how to navigate through these densities while releasing fear, because that's
mm,
alchemy, that's transmuting energy.
mm,
That's
mm.
turning something dense and icky and sticky into something light and bright and beautiful.
Yeah, and for any of those Christians that are listening, that is effectively the message of Jesus. That's exactly what that guy did.
Right.
He was showing the way of
Right.
transmuting that frequency of energy, and I see so many parallels with, the work, the things that he says, but also then in the work of like Bruce Lipton or Joe Dispenza or even David Hawkins, that
Hmm.
talking about access to the quantum field through the elevated emotions of gratitude and love, and
Yes.
it's the same thing, and
It's a doorway. And see,
mm,
the thing is there are many doorways to accessing the quantum field, to accessing the Akashic records, to accessing the energetics of source.
mm,
And which door you decide to walk through matters.
mm,
Because if you decide to walk through a doorway of fear, your experience is going to be based in that frequency and that resonance. So if you sit in a place of love and
mm,
gratitude and excitement, you walk through that doorway instead.
mm. Yeah, implications, and I think in the online space, obviously people are selecting their teachers and their following, and I think that has some real implications, doesn't it? Around,
Hmm.
it's this idea that you wouldn't climb Everest with someone who hasn't been there before, you wouldn't hire someone that's never been up. And I think if people are coming to people like yourself for that level of guidance, I think the first thing you've had to then master is your own process, your own way of being able to facilitate that connection, that healing, and that access.
I think it's really important too to understand that there's different levels that we transcend through, and
Mhm.
our consciousness expands as we move up that mountain. And
Mm,
so it's having an openness to understanding that the teacher you needed to get you from the bottom of the mountain to base camp is going to likely be different than the teacher that's going to get you from base camp to the very top of the mountain,
mm, mm.
because the
Yeah,
teacher's frequency is going to dictate their who they're connecting with and who they're leading,
yeah.
because there has to be a vibrational resonance between them, so they have to
Mm,
be within range. And so if you have somebody that's starting at the very bottom, their teacher is going to be different, and they're going to
mm,
move up that spectrum
mm.
as they grow and evolve.
One of the mind-bending one-liners that Neil Donald Walsh documents in Conversations with God, it says, "The absence of that which is not, that which is not." And it's this idea of, in the absence of you, there is no such thing as a me. In the absence of up, there's no such thing as a down, right? We need that
Yeah.
polarity to create a frame
Mhm.
of reference. And isn't it so ironic that our initial teachers, our early teachers, are probably the ones that cause us the pain, cause us the most pain, because it's in that kind of gift and of the opportunity, which is, that's not who I truly am. And
Yeah, you have to learn what you're not in order to learn what you are.
yeah, that's so sadistic, right?
Yeah. Yeah. But the thing is like our early teachers aren't even necessarily someone identified on a spiritual path. They're the people that have hurt us. They're the people
Yes.
who have treated us in ways that um, don't emanate what we really deserve to experience.
Mm,
They're the people who trigger us. They're the people that build the things inside of us that we eventually have to overcome.
mm. I interviewed a guy who's since become my mentor last year, and he says that those people, if we understand the term soul contracts, is that they have forgotten who they are, so that I might remember who I am. And it's like, oof, we're all just like you say.
Well,
I've seen,
yeah, like that, and that's one of the big things that I talk to about, talk to my clients, to my members, and sometimes on social media as well. Not everyone's going to wake up.
yeah,
They're
mm,
not meant to,
mm,
because of the contrast.
mm,
This is a dualistic world. The third
mm,
dimension is very dense, which means we need the contrast. We need to see
mm.
the other side. And we also need to show that side love and understand that they're playing a role in all
Yeah,
of this. And it's equally as important.
because that sets the backdrop for us to demonstrate who we are.
Exactly.
Yeah, right. I saw someone post earlier. It's just like, why do the love coaches least demonstrate love? And it's like, well, because they haven't become it. they have
Right.
not yet surrendered to becoming love. They might
Yeah.
be seeking it, but they haven't become it, because if they had, then they would, by the fruits of their spirit they would be known. But I guess, at what point did you really start to engage an awareness of, in this lifetime, what role have you chosen to play? Like, what's your purpose for being here in this lifetime? Have you I know you've embraced those questions so deeply. So what revelations have you gained?
I think that there was always a part of me that understood who I was.
Mm, mm,
I think that's why very early on in life, I was acutely aware that I never fit inside anyone's box.
mm.
I understood that. I fought against it for a long time. I tried to wedge myself into places and spaces that I didn't need to be.
Mm,
Um, but yeah, it's definitely over the last 5, 6 years that I've had a very large unfolding of understanding of who I am,
mm.
how I can help, but also at the same time, I know that that definition is fluid because I am not done. I'm
Yeah.
not done growing. I'm not done learning. I'm not going, oh, I know everything there is to know. That's impossible.
Yeah.
And so I know that as I continue to integrate my understanding
Mm,
of my connection with my guides, with source, with myself,
mm,
I step further into actualizing my higher self here.
mm.
And it's
Yeah.
that growing that connection and expressing that connection authentically that
Mm,
allows me to fulfill my purpose. Like your purpose is always unraveling. It's not
mm,
definable completely. Like I know I'm a channel, I'm a conduit, I am a teacher, I have a lot of knowledge, I am a mystic in a lot of ways. And I also understand science very
mhm,
well, and I
mhm,
understand how intermingled these
mm.
things are. And I hope to show people how that they can take the mystical and embody it in a physical experience because one of the spiritual um I think one of the toxic things in spirituality, especially promoted on social media, is this idea that we're going to go from 3D to 5D and we're going to transcend all of these things and you're going to poof out of existence and all of this stuff. And it's like that's not the point.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
came here to transform this world, which means you have to live in it. You have to
Mm,
exist in it. You have to embody
mm.
all levels of yourself, all experiences. You have to celebrate all of the hard things that you've experienced and get excited for all of the beautiful things to come, even though it's
100%.
going to be intermingled in all kinds of emotional experiences. Everything is ever changing.
Yeah. I got to that awareness through a Disney film, of all things. So
Which one?
Disney Soul. So
Yes. I was just
22 comes
talking
to
about that
a,
movie the other day with somebody
yeah.
because a friend of mine asked me about shadow work and I was
Yeah.
like, "Did you see the movie Soul? This is the best way for me to visually represent
Mm,
this experience when that piece gets thrown
yeah.
into the darkness and it needs to be rescued."
100%. Yeah. There's so much came up. So I interviewed a guy who had a near death experience the same week as I watched Disney Soul. It was like, pay attention, synchronicities, right? I'm going to show you. And obviously, in the bit of Soul, 22 goes nuts because she's like, he or she's just eating pizza. That understanding the soul doesn't have senses. That's what the body's for.
Hmm.
And it's like,
Right.
and then you start to understand, well, you can't take anything with you into the afterlife through the eye of the needle. Obviously, Jesus says, but that's about material. That's that matter, like the density. You're not taking that stuff with you.
Hmm.
You're taking with you your character and your experiences. And then I interviewed this guy who said his near-death experience was like this just big ball of light, this infinite ball of light in the universe. And he's just like, I just intuitively know I was just going back home. And that's the
Mm-hmm.
elevator in Soul, and they're all going back to this.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same image, and oh man, that near-death experience is David Ditchfield who is the man, and sadly he got put under a train, and he had a near-death experience on the operating table, and he was just in the cosmos. And one of the things that he experienced whilst he was there was like being healed by his guides. He was on this like table, and he's like, I just know the presence of these people who'd been with me forever. I just knew they'd been with me forever.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, these were my guides. And then he looks over the cosmos and has an interaction with Christ, and then he comes back into his body. And so I'd love to know, kind of like, he acknowledged the presence of guides. When did you become like acquainted with guides, and then start to build this understanding and awareness,
That's a really good question.
and then engagement is
So I think my first inkling was that long, long ago when I read The Alchemist.
Mhm.
I was like, oh, this hits. This makes sense to me
Mm,
for
mm,
some reason. And I've had things happen in my life where there were lots of signs and synchronicities and things like that. I just didn't have the language to explain what they were or an
mm,
understanding of what they were. I knew that they were happening. I knew that anytime I had a feeling about someone, it was never wrong. I was always very aware of my circumstances, who was around me, how things would play out, and it's been maybe a fraction of a percent that I've been proven wrong on that.
mhm,
And so I always knew there was something there.
mm,
But it really was that moment in New York where I asked, because the thing is like up until that point, it was just kind of like, oh, whatever happens. But I hadn't asked for
mm.
help. I'm determined that I'm the person that will try and move a couch upstairs by herself,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Asking for help was something I had to really learn how to
Yeah.
do. And so what the second I started to get those signs and synchronicities, I was like, okay, there's definitely help here. And then there was this gap of healing, of going through that experience and healing from that and all of that. Um, that there was this like space created,
Mm,
uh, that I didn't really feel like I had a connection. I still knew things were working out, but I didn't really feel like I had a
mhm,
connection. Um, and then I met this girl, Sam, and our meeting in and of itself is just so divinely orchestrated and so obvious of our friendship through time and space.
mm,
And I was going through a divorce, and she had cancer. And we had some situations where we had conversations, and she was explaining to me how she talked to people that weren't here anymore. And I was like, huh, I had never really met anyone that did that up until that point. And so that always stuck with me like, oh, well, yeah, that makes sense. Sammy's out there having a conversation that
mhm,
I don't know why I know that that's true, but I know that that is true. And she passed away, and I made her a promise. And then she started showing up everywhere. Everywhere. Every last one of our jokes, our songs, the things we enjoyed,
mm,
like,
mm,
was screaming in my face to a point that
mm,
I couldn't ignore it anymore.
mm,
And she was actually the one that guided me into going into like theta states of meditation and things like that. And that's how I connected. And
wow.
so I think a lot of times when people are uneasy about guides, there will be somebody that you physically knew that will be there waiting to hold your hand and pull you through. And
Mm,
I think that that is absolutely beautiful.
thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that. I I've always held this idea in the last few years that Jesus is my guide, or he's my guy. And then just recently, I surrendered to a 7-day fast. I know you talk about fasting. I'd love to know your views on it. So I really, I, I the true story, the real authentic, embarrassing story is I was having a steam room, and a voice just comes in and says, "Hey, you need to do a 7-day fast." I was like, "Okay." It's like a knowing trust, right? I was like, "I've done 5 days
Yeah, that
before.
is how
Okay."
it works, especially with clairaudience. You're just like, I know that's not me, but I also know no one else heard that.
Yeah, it was like it's. I was just like I just said yes, okay, like, and
Uh-huh.
then so I start the 7-day fast. My wife thinks I'm mad, and she's just like, "This is really inconvenient, but okay, fine. If this is what you're gonna do, like,"
Right.
and then so I've really set my intentions. I know I'm really gonna do this for a kind of like a spiritual discipline, really allowing myself to trust and
Mhm.
surrender and be provided for, and again receive help and know that I couldn't do it alone. And 2 days into the fast, it's like on day 7, you are going to do a park run. So I don't know if you have park run in America, but it's like a 5K run around
Oh,
a
okay, yeah.
yes, it's like
A
5K.
marathon.
Well, 5K, is
Yeah,
went
the
pretty fast.
5K marathon, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So it's like, okay, fine, I'm going to do that. And then a couple of days later, it was like, you're going to wear a 10-kilogram weighted vest. And I was just like, you are kidding me. And I was like, okay. So
Mhm.
I start running with my weighted vest, day 7. And I feel quite emotional because I've got my playlist on, and I'm like, feeling quite welling up as I'm starting to run. Like my eyes are blurry. I've
Yeah.
not eaten for 7 days. It's like I'm getting quite shaky. I can see the heels and things like that running, and I just hear myself say, "I'm doing this," and then I just hit it clear as day. We're doing this, and it was the first
Mhm.
time I really felt an awareness of a group of presence. And for me, what had been really resonating with me over the last sort of few months was this idea of heaven's army are mobilizing. And I
Oh,
felt,
yes.
yeah, right. So
There's
I,
no disagreement with that. It's funny because as you're talking and as you're accepting that there is a
mm,
group, I so I don't have any friends, like close friends or anything that are in the military, but for
mm,
whatever reason, this concept has always been clear to me in like a operational standpoint, like a military operation
mm,
or a uh like Navy SEAL or
mm-hmm,
a
mm-hmm,
situation where you have the ground crew, you have the command center,
mm-hmm.
and then you have like the sky team that is like with you, like helping you navigate like all of these things. And
Mm.
so, yes,
Well,
you
they
have a team with
mobilized.
you all the time.
Yeah, well, I felt them mobilized, and it felt like they were marching along with me, and it was a very overwhelming experience. It's not
Hmm.
something that I feel I've mastered a connection with, and in fact, it's probably something for me to continue to be journeying with. But I wonder whether you like have process to get into that connection, whether you ever feel disconnected, and what you do about that. It's what's your perspective on that?
So I think a lot of times when we feel disconnected, that is an illusion of disconnection because we're always connected.
Hmm.
And it is the kind of the framework of the limiting beliefs of this space that we learn to navigate through that give us the interpretation that we are disconnected because we really are connected at all times. It's accepting that connection and learning to navigate how that feels because, like, you explained a lot of um, physical feelings through that, and fasting will clear out your system in some ways.
Hmm.
That's why it is a spiritual practice
Yeah.
because it's not just like, oh, how long can I go without
Yeah.
eating? It is a meditative,
Yeah.
systematic
Yeah.
process where you really are able to physically push yourself to understand your energetics
Mm.
and the emotionality, and it also clears a lot of stuff out of the body, clears a lot of stuff out of the body. And the physical body is just as important for this process as
Yes.
everything else because this is the physical vessel that the soul is moving through. The soul is decided to experience life with. And
Mm.
so learning how to operate in alignment with the body is
Mm.
very important. That's part of why we're here. That's part of the challenge of being here, right? Because we didn't come with an operating manual when we got
Yeah.
here.
Well, with that, yeah, and I think many people have well, maybe our education system, our healthcare system, our food care, maybe there's some
But
reasons
yeah,
why.
we have a lot of improvements to
Yeah,
make.
or some might say it was
So,
designed that way because
yeah.
we've forgotten who we are, we've forgotten the innate biology and the technologies that we've been given, and I think sometimes when you go down that process, the bigger industries, for whatever reason, whether that just be as naively as just the programming, or whether it be something more sinister, is certainly keeping us from our true nature or
I
the
think
illusion of our.
so. I think it's running. We run a fine line when we start to categorize things into more sinister categories,
Mm,
because that's the perspective that we're choosing to see the world through,
mhm,
instead of going, okay, this is the framework that this world was created in, and we were meant to come here to transcend that. That was part of the operation that we signed up to, the mission that we signed up to complete. And
mm,
so we were meant to navigate through that. When it comes to connecting with the guides, I connect in a lot of different ways. The first way that really opened up that was really loud for me was clairaudience. So
mhm,
I can hear them very, very well.
mm,
And it it moved on to being able to go, okay, you're over there in the corner. Thank you. Those kinds
yeah.
of things. Like I can see them, I can sense them, those kinds of things. I feel sensations in my body. There's a lot of, I can tell uh, who I'm talking to depending on where they are. So, like, placement is
Mm,
very
mm,
important so that you understand who's there. So I
mm.
have I have many, and they're, somebody's always here, but it's like one of those things like, oh, somebody's always got my six, like somebody's always got me at all
100%.
times, so I don't
Yeah.
have to worry about it. It's not something that I
Mm,
need to um, be hyper aware of all of the time.
mm,
But I do think it is funny that I receive these comments from time to time on social media, like, "Can you get rid of the intro? Like, it's too long," when it comes to my messages, and it's like, no, because the thing is that that piece
mhm,
is is A, I need to acknowledge where this is coming from. That
mhm,
is very important. And if I cut that off, that doesn't give gratitude and give thanks for the energies that are channeling through. And that's also a trigger for my system to shut down.
mm,
So it shuts down my nervous system, and it just comes out.
mm,
And so we
mm,
all have different ways of going about doing that. And I didn't intend for it to be that way. It just naturally
mm,
happened. And so when people are wanting to connect more, it's not about
mhm,
following a specific process. It's about taking the tools that people can offer you to
mm.
help you connect, and then you learning how you connect best.
Yeah. And I imagine because you've given yourself the gift of practice and repetition and new programming, that you're getting to the point where, like in Soul, where that guy's flipping the sign, he gets into a state of flow, and the soul just expresses itself.
Yeah, it just happens. It's when it first started, it was much more clunky. It's
Yeah.
kind of like a train that's starting to
Mm,
leave the station. It takes a minute to like get smooth and get going.
mm, mm,
But it just flows now. But
mm,
those moments of disconnection, I think a lot of times people confuse stillness for disconnection.
How so?
So when the energy is quiet,
Right.
when it feels like looking out onto a completely still lake,
Mm,
they think they're disconnected.
mm,
And it's really that space, that void between where you were and where you're going.
mm,
And you have to be able to sit in that uncomfortability in those moments, that gap, that void, because that's where creation happens. That's where the shift into a new timeline happens. That's where you draw in that higher vibrational reality.
Yeah. So powerful, isn't it? And then you come to the realization that there's only one of us in the room. And there's only one of us. We're talking to ourselves. It's like
Mhm.
walking each other home.
Yeah. Yeah,
Mm,
because we're all connected.
mm,
And at some point, whatever point that may be,
mm,
we it's hard to explain how we are source, but also fractaled off from.
yes.
Like our awareness is fractaled off from. We're an individual soul having an individual experience,
Yeah.
but we are still everything.
Yes.
And like signs and synchronicities are so multi-layered. They mean one
Mm,
thing to you and something else to to other people.
yeah.
And it's in that acceptance of understanding that we all are sharing our experiences and we all are walking each other home. We are walking ourselves home, we're walking everyone else home, and everything we do impacts everyone else.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's why I really have to remind people a lot of time that working on yourself and healing yourself and focusing on you and setting healthy boundaries and doing all of these things
Mm,
is not selfish, because a lot of times you may be the first person in your friend circle, family circle, whatever, to do that.
yeah.
But in doing that, you are elevating your frequency and then they respond to that. And then it's a game of follow the leader.
100%. 100%. Energetic follow the leader. As I ascend, I bring you with me.
Hmm.
As I ascend, I am more capable of demonstrating with love and grace and compassion and kindness and empathy. My words and my hands and my actions become more like love. I mean, this podcast is about heart-centered leadership, and it's the very essence of what we're getting to. Is how do I allow myself to be transformed by the remembering of who I truly am, and
Hmm.
then come to the world, then bringing that with which I've been gifted in the service of ourselves really, because we're all part of the same source. Yeah, I just love that phrase, the fractal expression of the divine. And the way I've got my head around that is that, as a wave is to the ocean, I can capture an individual wave, but if I was to try and put the entire ocean in a bottle, it'd explode, right? If I was trying to put the entire power of source into this body, I would explode. But it's for this moment in
Hmm.
this lifetime. I think I heard the phrase, this is the universe in Ryan form.
In what form?
Ryan, my name, as in the
Oh,
universe,
okay.
the
It's
universe
the
in this.
accent. I was like, did you say?
Yeah,
I thought you said Orion there for
oh
a minute. I
Ryan, yeah.
was
Oh, that's a whole
like,
different meaning.
that's a
But
whole nother, that's a whole nother conversation.
100%, I am the universe taking form in whatever it means to be Ryan.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like the hermetic principle of the all,
Mm,
and then mentalism and in the idea that, we're all a fever dream of source, so to speak.
mm. Which is
And
then
that,
freedom to create, right? From the
yeah,
create, yeah, freedom to create from that backdrop.
yeah. And then also anchor in your experience. It's a balance.
Mm.
Because I do see there's like a level that people reach when they realize like, oh, I am a fractal of source, so I am everything, but that also means I'm nothing. So all like then there's no point to any of this.
Oh, no, no, no,
Like,
no. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
and like, that like everybody reaches that point and then you
yeah,
have to
yeah,
go,
yeah,
oh wait, but still I am a soul in a human body right now, and
yeah,
it's my
yeah, yeah.
job to have this experience.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, because I think sometimes we have a lot of spiritual cosplay. I think the ego's last act of defiance is to give the apparition of
yeah.
spiritualism. And I think, this is where probably ego death comes from. Have to kill the ego, have to spend my days, like 8 hours in meditation all
Well,
day long. And
Yes. Yeah. And it's like, well, no, you're actually supposed to be integrating your meditation into your waking life.
Yeah.
Like, yes, meditating every day for periods of time is very, very helpful, but also can you express how you are in meditation in
Mm,
your waking living life? Because
mm,
that's the ultimate meditation, right?
yeah. 100%. I was fortunate enough to interview Dr. Bruce Lipton, and I went and saw him in London recently. And the guy's like in his 80s. He's got so much energy. That guy spoke on stage for hours and hours and hours and hours. And at the end, he was just like, "Man, I love this life. We're in the garden. This is the Garden of Eden. It's life is a gift. I'm loving this
Yeah.
experience so much." And it's like, man, the guy's like, he's mastering it. He's absolutely mastering what it means to be in this lifetime, which is to realize the gift that it is, that we can't take anything but our experiences with us. And it's just like, yeah, come and live life to the fullest.
That's why gratitude is so important.
Mm,
I try to end my day every day with reminding myself that I love my life.
mm,
Thank you, thank you, thank you for my life
mm,
because I
yeah.
get to express my soul through this incarnation. Like what a beautiful gift.
Mm, mm. People that are drawn to work with you, what's that experience like? What can they expect?
It really depends on the person,
Yeah.
to be honest. I have amazing clients,
Yeah.
amazing one-on-one clients. I've had clients that have worked with me for years that are absolutely like, you're the Sherpa that is walking me up the mountain, and we are going for this. And I have watched them evolve and
Yeah.
open up to experiences that they didn't think were possible,
Yeah.
open themselves up to manifestations that felt very, very far
Mm,
away. I work very intuitively, obviously.
mhm,
Um, I basically remain open when I am coaching and working with somebody. So I'm listening to them. I'm also listening to the nudges from the guides
mm,
of
mm.
where to uh, challenge them
Yeah.
on their beliefs and where to focus their attention in a place that's not too far forward in the future so that they're
Mm,
able to take the steps on their path. A lot of my clients, especially early on, they have to learn how to regulate their nervous system. That is a big component of
mhm,
letting go of limiting beliefs
mhm.
because those things fire and wire in your brain, but they also fire and wire in the nervous system throughout your whole body. So your body has reactions, physical reactions
Yeah.
to when you get rid of limiting beliefs. That doesn't always feel the most comfortable. And so navigating those experiences is really, really important. And so it really does depend on where the person is.
Mm,
Um, if they're pretty deep in some stuff, we got to get them like into neutral before we can really start to elevate into other places and spaces. Because I do take people into like deeper, like theta trance states.
mhm,
It would be a form of hypnosis,
mhm.
basically self hypnosis, and navigating through that space, your energy, you have to clear out some stuff before we go into that. And I'm not one of those practitioners that will just go, oh, well, this is a service that I provide and we're just going to go through regardless. Like that's not helpful to
Mhm.
people if they can't discern some level of those messages. Like obviously I'm
Yeah.
there to help them discern those.
Yeah.
But when you start to experience the quantum realm, past lives, connections with your higher self, that's a lot of energy. And those are
Mm,
new experiences that a lot of times come with a level of fear that you have to work through. And so guiding them through in a way where they can anchor into a space for their highest good and the highest good of all is
yeah.
very, very important.
Yeah. And trusting that we have a higher good that wants the best
Yeah.
for, yeah, and trusting ourselves that that's a something we can step into and embrace.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I move intuitively through all of my sessions. All of the sessions, they all look very different. Um, Beautiful magic happens so many
Mm,
times. Like I love when the guides show up. Like sometimes they show up on my Zoom calls and they put little things on the screen and all kinds of stuff.
mm,
And I never I never know exactly what to anticipate, but it always goes through in such a divinely guided way
Mm,
that I'm so excited for all of my clients.
mm,
And then all of the members that I work with, while I don't necessarily work with all of them one-on-one, being able to take them through a transformative experience every
mm,
month and sitting on a Q&A with them for sometimes a couple of hours afterwards, like helping them
mm,
navigate the meditation spaces. Because a lot of times when you're early on going into these meditations and you're trying to figure out who,
mm.
what, where you're communicating with and what your experience means, being able to ask questions in a place that doesn't have any judgment and that is safe is really, really important.
Yeah.
Really important because
Mm,
these are things that are just starting to be talked about more widely throughout the population.
mhm.
And so, if we had a lot of the conversations that I have, if we had had those, 20 years ago, people would have thought we were nuts. And the best part about it is that science is coming out and going, no, you're not nuts. Like this is really happening. Like I saw um a company out of Silicon Valley uh performed some studies and was able to have people pass information to each other in a dream state. So we are accessing levels of
Mm,
consciousness that we weren't accessing before, and we have tools and methods of measuring things and ways to study
yeah.
that we didn't have before, that is bridging this gap between science and spirituality, which is
Love that.
really cool.
Yeah, Dr. Roland McCratty from Heart Math Institute was on a couple of weeks ago, and his final thought was like, "My goal in life is to prove the existence of the human soul scientifically, like beyond
Hmm.
doubt." And there's like, we got people in the world that are pursuing those sorts of levels of questions, which gives me hope. Um, that's really powerful. I have a curious question that's on my shoulder, which is, I have recently been working in the men's space. Men have been drawn to me, and we've been journeying together
Hmm.
in a way of what it means to be heart-centered men, right? Um, 90% of my clients over the last 6 years have been women, and this is a really kind of powerful expansion of how I'm serving people, men specifically, for the betterment of everybody that comes into contact with that
Yes.
man. What do you intuitively think about the imbalance of polarity at the moment, and is there anything that is on your heart that could readdress that in a more healthy expression?
Imbalances happen. They happen to teach us.
Mm,
Um, they happen to show us where we need more gratitude and more appreciation.
mm,
And we signed up for what we signed up for this experience, right? And I think women as a whole have been put through a lot of experiences over the past several thousand years.
mhm,
And the times are changing.
mhm,
And we needed that contrast to understand that it's not all or nothing. It's not all male or female. It is a balance of both because the rise of the divine feminine energy in our um, ecosystems around the world is a testament to understanding what not to repeat.
mm,
So it's not, um, oh, women are now going to suppress men.
mhm,
Um, it's not meant to work like that. And so
mm,
it's meant to bring love and care and nurturing to a space that was lacking.
mhm,
And there's always going to be a follow the leader energy in this. And so a lot of men are playing catch up. That is the reality of the situation. And I think the best thing that we can do is approach that with as much love as we possibly can and understanding while also maintaining healthy and hopeful boundaries.
Yeah, come on. Thank you for that. The honoring is the word, I think. It's honoring each other for the gift that we are to each other and bringing that in the fullest of service. I think we've touched on it so many times, is what we do for the I is what we do for the we, and I think that's
Mhm.
yeah, very powerful. I'm super conscious of your time. I have a word here, always better than yesterday, and it's called Heartprint, and the word symbolizes the ripple effect that we have, the possibilities that we create in others' lives. And I just wonder whether you take a moment and just really consider what you hope that your life's heartprint will be.
I hope that through the messages that I share and the work that I do and the work that I've done on myself allow me to lead as an example that it's safe to express your authentic self. And being your authentic self is how you help the world.
How do people connect with you? Where they find you? How do they work with you?
My website, drclaudiathompson.com, Dr. Claudia Thompson on Instagram, on Threads, and on TikTok. If you go to my website, there's all my offers are there. I do have some free meditations that you can get to through my link in bio on TikTok and on Instagram. I've had amazing feedback on those meditations. The removing unhealthy habits and limiting beliefs, it's a great place to start. And yeah, follow me on my social channels and take what resonates and leave the rest.
Well, you posted that unhealthy habits reel about 4 days ago, and then I open it. First thing I do this morning, I open my phone, and it's like your face says, "I hear you've got some unhealthy habits." I'm like, "No,
You're like, not today.
not today,
No.
not yet." Just as I'm contemplating my social media usage is the first thing as I do when I wake up. Yeah, thanks.
You know what the thing is with those meditations? So when people hear that, and the thing is I don't understand how powerful these meditations are until I do them for myself. So I'm getting myself to you guys. This isn't just
Yeah.
oh, I'm helping you. Like these meditations, I do these meditations and they work through me as well. And the thing about those meditations is about being open to what shows up. Because again, we want to accept that help and that guidance, and that energy is really there in those meditations because I channel through those meditations. I kind of sit back and I figure out what they are when they're all done. And so the key with those meditations is not going in like, oh, I want to change my social media usage. It's going, whatever needs to float to the surface that I need to change to reach this next level or move one more step on my path. That's what's going to show up and that's what is going to be released.
It's
And
all
let it be
faith.
what it needs to be.
It's all faith. It's all a leap of faith. It's all trust.
Leap of
Yeah.
faith is you have to sit with the frequency of faith to get to your higher self. You have to.
What does it say on the inside of your left arm?
This is actually a big piece of the beginning of my journey, and it says, "Remember, beautiful, falling from grace is a chance to rise."
Dr. Claudia, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for
You're
sharing your heart and your
welcome.
mind with us. And I wonder whether you or your guides have a final thought for us.
Have the courage to step into yourself, because that's where your greatest realization of this incarnation is. And have the faith that your higher self is there. They're willing to guide you, and they're not separate from you at any given time.
Let's go. Thank you, my friend.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Hey, my friends, thank you for making it to the end. I hope that our time spent together today has left you a little bit better than before you push play. I'd really appreciate if you just took a moment to leave a review to allow me to meet more people where they are and hopefully leave them a little bit better too. If you're curious to know how I, through Always Better Than Yesterday, can serve you, your team, your organisation, then head to alwaysbetterthanyesterday.com to connect. And while you're there, let me know 1 or 2 things that you're going to do as a result of listening to this conversation. I absolutely love hearing your thoughts, your reflections, and the things that this spark in your own heart and mind. If you want more insights from my heart and mind, I do send out short episodes on a Monday, Tuesday, Thursday and Friday, and again, I hope that they serve you well. I appreciate you listening. I'm Ryan Hartley, host of the Always Better Than Yesterday podcast, a podcast for heart-centered leaders just like you. Keep leading, my friends. Always love.